There's a moment everyone in this room has felt but rarely talks about. That sting when you pour your heart into something and nobody notices. When you show up, you put in the work, you give everything you've got, and instead of claps, all you hear is silence. Being ignored cuts deep. It makes you question your value, your purpose, even your place in the world. But what if I told you that silence isn't your enemy? What if I told you that silence is actually your greatest weapon? See, most people think power is about being the loudest voice in the room, the one always demanding attention. But the truth is different. Real power lives in restraint. Real power is when you don't let their ignorance break you, when you don't let their dismissal distract you. It's when you turn the silence they give you into silence you control. Because silence, when you own it, speaks louder than any argument, any explanation, any demand for respect. So tonight, I'm not here to talk about what happens when they cheer for you. I'm here to talk about the power you discover when they don't. Silence as power is one of the most misunderstood concepts in life. People are conditioned to believe that strength is shown in loudness, in arguments, in making sure everyone knows how you feel. But the truth is, silence can be the greatest weapon you carry. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you've surrendered. And it doesn't mean you're afraid. It means you've mastered control over yourself. The one who can stay quiet in the face of chaos has the upper hand because they are not letting the situation dictate their emotions. When someone ignores you, the natural reaction most people have is to force themselves to be seen or heard. They want to prove their worth. They want to defend their value. They want to demand attention. But that's the trap. The moment you beg for recognition, you've already given away your power. Silence flips the script. It says, I don't need your acknowledgement to validate me. That's strength on a level most people can't reach because it takes discipline to sit still when your pride wants to lash out. Think about how much energy is wasted on words that don't change anything. Arguments, debates, responses to disrespect. They drain you, but rarely elevate you. Silence conserves your energy. It saves your strength for actions, for moves, for progress. Instead of burning your fuel trying to get people to listen, you use it to keep building your vision. And when your silence is intentional, speaks louder than anything you could ever say. It's like saying, I'm not moved by your ignorance because I'm too busy moving forward. Silence also forces others to confront themselves. When you don't respond, you're not feeding the cycle of noise. If someone disrespects you and you answer with silence, they're left with their own words echoing back at them. They have to sit with their actions, and often that reflection hits harder than any comeback could. People expect reactions. They expect anger. They expect to fight. They expect proof that they got under your skin. But when you give them nothing, you take their power away. The power of silence is also deeply connected to focus. Every moment you spend trying to be noticed is a moment you take away from your grind. Silence gives you tunnel vision. It tells the world, I don't need to explain myself. You'll see it when it's ready. And there's something magnetic about that. People may ignore you now, but silence creates curiosity. When you don't broadcast every move, others start to wonder what you're working on. They can't ignore the results forever, and when those results show up, they speak for themselves. Silence is also a form of self-respect. It means you refuse to lower yourself into petty battles or demand attention from people who don't deserve to witness your growth. It's a way of saying you value your peace more than their approval. And once you truly embrace that, you become untouchable. Your power no longer depends on who claps for you or who even sees you. Your power comes from knowing you're building something real, whether people watch or not. In life, there will always be moments when you're overlooked, dismissed, or ignored. That's unavoidable. But what separates the strong from the weak is how they respond. Weakness screams for recognition. Strength stays silent and builds until recognition becomes inevitable. Silence allows you to grow in the shadows, away from judgment, away from expectations, until the day your light is too bright to be denied. And by then, you've built such a foundation that no amount of ignoring can shake you. Silence also trains patience. To be silent when you feel the urge to prove yourself is hard. It goes against ego, against pride, against the human need for acknowledgement. But by holding silence, you're training yourself to think long term. You're teaching yourself that the best answer isn't always immediate. Sometimes the best response is to wait, to keep working, to let time reveal the truth. That patience is powerful because it keeps you steady when others are falling apart trying to chase validation. The greatest storms don't announce themselves with noise. They move in silence until the impact is felt. That's the essence of power through silence. When you're quiet, people underestimate you, they dismiss you, they forget about you. And that's the advantage. While they sleep on you, you prepare. While they ignore you, you create. While they doubt you, you build. And when the time comes, your silence transforms into undeniable presence. Silence's power is not about being passive or weak. It's about being intentional. It's about knowing that your strength doesn't come from proving anything to anyone else. It comes from discipline, from control, from refusing to let outside noise dictate your inner peace. When they ignore you, don't fight to be heard. Sit in your silence. Let it build you, let it protect you, let it fuel you. Because silence, when used with purpose, is not emptiness. It's the loudest statement you ever make. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you own, and most people waste it without even realizing it. Every argument, every reaction, every attempt to prove yourself to someone who refuses to see your worth drains you of energy you could be using to build. When they ignore you, it's natural to want to respond, to demand acknowledgement, to push back against the feeling of invisibility. But the deeper truth is that chasing attention steals your focus. Protecting your energy through silence is what allows you to stay locked in on what matters most. Every time you respond to negativity or try to explain yourself to people who have already decided to overlook you, you hand them control over your emotional state. They might not clap for you, they might not support you, but the moment you let their lack of recognition bother you enough to react, they win. You've handed them your power, and worse, you've scattered your own focus. Silence takes that control back. Instead of engaging, you let the energy that would have gone into words or frustration fuel your work. That's how you conserve strength. By choosing not to let outside noise disturb your inner vision. Think about how much noise fills the world every day. Social media, gossip, people projecting their opinions, people deciding who deserves attention and who doesn't. If you let all of that get inside your head, you'll never move forward with clarity. Protecting your energy means learning to filter out everything that doesn't serve your purpose. When they ignore you, that's just another distraction trying to pull you off course. Silence is a shield against that. By not reacting, you keep your energy clean, you keep it aligned with your goals instead of letting it leak into battles that don't matter. There's also a deeper discipline in choosing silence. The ego always wants to speak, to defend, to prove. Pride hates being ignored because it feels like rejection. But rejection isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes being ignored is protection. It keeps you hidden from people who might not support you for the right reasons. It allows you to grow without interference. Conserving your energy during these moments is about trusting that not every stage needs an audience. Some stages are for practice, some stages are for preparation, and silence gives you the space to put your energy where it counts, on becoming the person you're meant to be. The way you spend your energy determines the life you build. If you spend it reacting, you build frustration. If you spend it seeking validation, you build dependency on others. But if you spend it creating, learning, and staying focused, you build something lasting. That's why silence is so powerful when you're ignored. Instead of pouring energy into proving your value, you invest it into growth. Over time, the work you put in becomes undeniable, and the very people who ignored you will have no choice but to see. But by then, their attention won't matter because your energy will have already carried you to a higher level. Protecting your energy also means recognizing that not everyone deserves access to it. Not everyone deserves your explanations, your emotions, or your reactions. When people ignore you, that's often their way of telling you they don't see your value right now. That's fine. Don't force them to. Don't give them your energy to convince them otherwise. Instead, use their absence as a reminder to pour more into yourself. The most powerful people are not the ones constantly shouting to be seen, but the ones who keep building quietly until their presence is impossible to deny. Another part of conserving energy is understanding timing. Not every situation requires a response right now. Sometimes the best move is no move. Silence teaches patience. It teaches you to let time work in your favor. While others burn themselves out chasing every chance to be heard, you conserve your energy, and when the right opportunity comes, you're ready. The energy you've saved allows you to show up with power, clarity, and strength. Those who wasted theirs on noise won't be able to keep up. When you protect your energy through silence, you also protect your peace. Peace is priceless. Without it, even success feels empty. Constantly reacting to being ignored steals that peace because it ties your sense of worth to how others treat you. But when you hold silence, you're telling yourself that your value isn't up for debate. You're anchoring your peace in your own belief, not in someone else's recognition. And peace gives you the mental space to stay creative, to stay focused, to keep moving without being shaken by outside noise. Silence and energy conservation go hand in hand because both are about control. Control of yourself, your reactions, your focus, and your growth. It's not about letting people get away with disrespect. It's about understanding that not every battle is worth fighting, not every slight deserves your time, and not every act of being ignored is meant to break you. Sometimes it's meant to redirect you. Sometimes it's meant to remind you that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on those who can't see you. True strength is not in how loudly you respond, but in how wisely you preserve what fuels you. Energy is the currency of progress, and silence is the vault that protects it. When they ignore you, the most powerful move you can make is to stay quiet, conserve your energy, and keep building. Because eventually, the energy you've been storing will show itself through your growth, and that will say more than any words ever could. Growth in the shadows is one of the most underestimated blessings in life. When people ignore you, when they don't acknowledge your efforts, it can feel like rejection, but in reality, it is an invitation to focus without distraction. The shadows give you space to prepare, to sharpen your craft, to fail in silence and learn without judgment. Everyone wants to be seen, but being seen too early can be dangerous. If the spotlight finds you before you are ready, it exposes your weaknesses before your strengths have matured. Growth in the shadows is about taking advantage of being overlooked, using that quiet season as fuel to evolve into someone unstoppable. When the world isn't watching, you can experiment freely. You can try, fail, adjust, and try again without the weight of opinions. There's freedom in being ignored because it means no one is waiting to tear apart your every move. In the shadows, you have room to be a beginner, to make mistakes that would otherwise be magnified under attention. Every misstep becomes a lesson, every correction a step forward. Growth is never instant, it's built brick by brick, and the shadows give you the patience to lay those bricks with care. Being ignored also forces you to turn inward. Instead of chasing validation from others, you begin to rely on your own standards. You learn to measure progress by your effort, not by applause. That independence of thought becomes one of the strongest qualities you can carry, because once you've grown in silence, you no longer need outside approval to keep moving. You realize that your journey isn't about proving others wrong or right. It's about proving yourself capable. That shifted mindset creates unshakable confidence, the type of confidence that no amount of being overlooked can take away. In the shadows, consistency becomes your best friend. Without recognition, the only thing pushing you forward is discipline. When no one claps, you still have to show up. When no one notices, you still have to put in the work. This consistency molds your character, shaping you into someone who doesn't depend on the outside world to keep going. And over time, that habit of showing up day after day builds momentum. It creates results that eventually speak louder than words, but more importantly, it forges resilience within you. Growth in the shadows is also about humility. When you're not being seen, it humbles you to realize that recognition isn't promised and that you're not entitled to attention. That humility keeps you grounded. It stops your ego from inflating too soon, and it reminds you to stay focused on the process instead of the praise. Humility doesn't mean weakness, it means clarity. It allows you to see the bigger picture and accept that growth is slow, that the best things take time, and that silence doesn't mean stagnation, it means preparation. The shadows also reveal who is truly dedicated. Many people start strong when the crowd is watching, but lose motivation when no one pays attention. Growth in the shadows separates those who want to look successful from those who are willing to put in the unseen hours to become successful. If you can keep working when nobody notices, when nobody cares, that's when you prove to yourself that your purpose is real. That type of dedication becomes the foundation for everything else, because once the spotlight finally arrives, you won't be rattled by it, you'll be ready for it. There is also strength in being underestimated. When people ignore you, they don't expect much from you, and that creates an advantage. It gives you time to move quietly, to build without interference, to prepare surprises that no one sees coming. By the time your growth is visible, you're already far ahead. Being ignored puts you in a position where the element of surprise works in your favor. While others were watching someone else, you were putting in the hours, and suddenly your presence commands attention they never thought they'd have to give you. Growth in the shadows also builds appreciation. When recognition does come, you value it more deeply because you know what it felt like to be invisible. You understand the grind that went into reaching that moment, and you respect the process that got you there. That appreciation keeps you from taking success for granted, and it reminds you to keep working with the same hunger that carried you through the silent years. Without the shadows, success would feel empty because it would arrive without struggle, without patience, without growth. The beauty of growing in the shadows is that it transforms you into someone unstoppable. When you've spent years working without recognition, you learn to thrive without applause. You know how to move without being noticed, how to focus without distraction, how to push without approval. By the time the world finally sees you, your foundation is unshakable. They may think you came out of nowhere, but you'll know it was years of silent growth that brought you there. Growth in the shadows is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the universe's way of giving you space to build in peace before the noise arrives. It is the season where roots dig deep before branches spread wide. It is the quiet before the breakthrough. And if you embrace it instead of resisting it, you'll find that the shadows were never meant to bury you, they were meant to grow you. Respect through action is one of the purest forms of power you can develop. Words are easy. Anyone can say what they plan to do. Anyone can talk about their dreams. Anyone can argue for recognition. But words without action are empty, and eventually they fade into noise. Action, on the other hand, is undeniable. It doesn't need explanation, it doesn't require permission, and it doesn't beg for validation. It simply speaks for itself. When people ignore you, when they don't give you the respect you believe you deserve, your most powerful response isn't to demand acknowledgement, but to let your actions build a record that no one can deny. Respect through action comes from consistency. One great effort might catch someone's eye for a moment, but it is the repetition of effort, the daily discipline, the commitment to keep showing up that forces people to pay attention. When you keep moving forward despite being overlooked, you prove to yourself first that you don't need their recognition to keep going. And over time, the weight of your actions builds into a story that others can't ignore. People may dismiss your words, but they cannot dismiss the results that stand in front of them. When you act instead of speaking, you remove the chance for doubt. Words invite debate. Someone can argue with what you say. They can challenge your opinions. They can question your claims. But results end the conversation. If you say you're dedicated, that can be questioned. If you show up every day and produce, that dedication is self-evident. If you say you're growing, people can doubt it. But when your actions show growth, there's nothing left to argue. Respect comes not because you demanded it, but because you earned it through what you've built. Another power of action is that it creates impact that goes beyond your personal need for recognition. When you choose action over words, your focus shifts from proving something to others to actually creating something of value. That value becomes bigger than the conversation about whether or not people respect you. It transforms into something they benefit from. Something they can't help but notice. At that point, their respect isn't about how they feel towards you, it's about what your actions contributed. And when your work brings undeniable value, respect follows naturally. There is also a deep level of discipline in letting actions speak. Talking often provides a quick hit of satisfaction. It feels good to say what you plan to do. It feels good to defend yourself with words. But when you withhold that urge and channel it into action, you are training yourself to delay gratification. You're reminding yourself that it's not about feeling respected in the moment. It's about earning lasting respect over time. That discipline shapes you into someone who is not easily distracted by opinions or emotions. You begin to realize that silence and movement together are far louder than any words spoken in frustration. Respect through action also teaches patience. Results don't appear overnight, and sometimes it takes months or years before the weight of your actions is fully recognized. During that time, it's easy to get discouraged and feel invisible. But the longer you hold your silence and continue working, the stronger your results become. By the time they surface, they're too solid to be questioned, too real to be denied. The patience you build while waiting for your actions to speak creates a foundation of resilience that stays with you for life. When people finally begin to respect you because of your actions, it hits different than respect that comes from words. Respect earned through action is rooted in reality. It's not fragile. It's not dependent on whether someone agrees with your opinions, and it's not something that can be taken away by gossip or negativity. It is grounded in fact, in the undeniable evidence of what you've accomplished, and because of that, it carries a weight that no argument can shake. There is also a ripple effect when you lead with action. Others watch, even if they pretend not to. They see your consistency, your work ethic, your dedication. Some may never admit it out loud, but your actions inspire them. They begin to realize that it's possible to push forward without recognition, to stay committed without applause. Respect isn't just given to you, it spreads outward, shaping the way others approach their own journeys. Action also commands respect because it shows self-belief. Words can mask insecurity. People talk loudest when they're unsure, but action shows that you trust your process enough to let it unfold naturally. You don't need to convince anyone because you're too busy proving it to yourself through movement. That confidence is magnetic. Even those who once ignored you begin to sense it. And respect often grows from that recognition of self-belief. Over time, respect through action builds a reputation. Reputations are not formed through promises, but through patterns. If your pattern is consistency, resilience, and growth, that becomes your identity in the eyes of others. People learn that your silence is not absence, it's preparation. They learn that your lack of response doesn't mean weakness. It means you're focused on building something they can't yet see. And eventually, when the results show, they respect you not because you asked for it, but because you left them no choice. Respect through action doesn't come quickly, and it doesn't always arrive in the way you expect. Sometimes the people who ignored you will never give you your flowers. But that doesn't matter, because action ensures that the world at large will. The respect you earn through consistent effort lives beyond the opinions of individuals. It becomes a legacy, proof that you didn't waste energy trying to be heard. You save that energy for creating, and creation speaks louder than any demand for recognition ever could. Turning pain into drive is one of the most transformative choices a person can make. Being ignored, overlooked, or dismissed can sting in ways that words can't fully capture. It hits at your pride, it makes you question your worth, and it can feel like proof that your effort isn't enough. But pain is energy, and energy doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. If you allow it to sit inside you, it turns into bitterness, resentment, and self-doubt. If you channel it outward, it can fuel your grind, sharpen your focus, and push you further than recognition ever could. The ability to take that feeling of being invisible and convert it into motivation is what separates those who fold under pressure from those who rise because of it. When people ignore you, the easy response is to give up. The voice in your head tells you that if nobody notices, what's the point? But pain has a way of digging deep. That ache you feel from being overlooked can either break you down or ignite you. Choosing the second path means you stop waiting for outside validation to spark your effort. Instead, you let the rejection itself become proof that you need to keep building. Every dismissive glance, every ignored effort, every silent response becomes fuel. Instead of running from the pain, you run with it, and it gives you stamina to go further than you thought you could. Pain is honest. It tells you where you're vulnerable, where your ego still seeks approval, where you still crave acknowledgement. When you face that pain, instead of avoiding it, you learn how to turn it into a tool. If being ignored hurts, it means you care enough to want to be seen. That care can either trap you in frustration or push you to build something so undeniable that being ignored becomes impossible. Pain shows you your desire, and drive is born when you take that desire and anchor it in action instead of emotion. Turning pain into drive also changes your relationship with failure. When you're already carrying the weight of being overlooked, failure doesn't scare you as much because you felt the sting of invisibility. Each setback becomes just another layer of fuel, another reason to keep moving forward. You begin to develop resilience, the ability to stand back up, not because someone clapped for you, but because the pain inside you refuses to let you stop. This drive born from pain doesn't quit easily. It remembers every moment you were ignored, and it uses those memories as reminders of why you started. There's also something powerful about building in spite of pain. When you create while overlooked, your progress is authentic. You're not moving to please anyone else. You're moving to prove to yourself that you can turn hurt into power. That authenticity shapes your drive into something steady and sustainable. Instead of chasing the highs of recognition, you're fueled by the steady burn of determination. Pain doesn't give you short bursts of motivation. It gives you a constant reminder that you have more to show, more to prove, more to build. Pain also sharpens focus. When you've been ignored, you stop wasting energy on people who don't see you, and you start pouring it into the grind. The pain becomes a filter, stripping away distractions and leaving only what matters. You realize that time spent chasing validation is wasted time, and that every ounce of energy is better spent on growth. This focus, born from pain, becomes one of your strongest tools. While others spread themselves thin trying to be noticed, you concentrate your effort on making undeniable progress. Turning pain into drive also fuels creativity. Pain forces you to dig deeper, to think differently, to find ways to channel your emotions into something productive. Some of the greatest ideas, the strongest art, and the most powerful movements are born out of being ignored, overlooked, or silenced. That pain becomes a well you draw from, and what you create from it carries weight because it is rooted in something real. People can sense when something is built out of genuine struggle, and that authenticity makes the results even more powerful. Drive born from pain also teaches endurance. Recognition is fleeting, applause comes and goes, but pain lingers until you transform it. When you use that lingering energy to fuel your drive, it keeps you moving long after excitement fades. You stop depending on quick wins or temporary validation because your motivation isn't shallow, it's rooted in something deeper. That endurance is what carries you through the long nights, the setbacks, the seasons when it feels like nothing is working. Pain reminds you of why you can't stop, and that reminder gives you strength when everything else feels like it's slipping. What makes turning pain into drive so powerful is that it transforms something that could destroy you into something that builds you. It's alchemy. The process of taking a negative and turning it into a positive. Instead of letting pain drag you down, you use it as a push forward. And the deeper the pain, the stronger the drive it can create if you choose to channel it. This choice doesn't erase the hurt, but it redefines it. Being ignored no longer feels like an ending. It becomes part of the fuel that propels you toward your next chapter. At some point, the pain fades, but the drive it created remains. The respect, the recognition, the results, all of that eventually arrives, but by then you've already built the habit of moving without applause. The pain that once made you question yourself becomes the reason you never stop pushing. And when the world finally notices, they see not just the success, but the fire behind it. A fire that was lit in silence and struggle, in the moments where pain could have broken you, but instead became the reason you rose. Inevitable recognition is the outcome of persistence, consistency, and quiet dedication. When you keep working while others overlook you, when you stay locked in even as people ignore your efforts, you are planting seeds that will eventually grow into results too visible to deny. Recognition doesn't always come when you want it, and it doesn't always come from the people you expect it from, but it always arrives when you've built something real, because the world cannot ignore evidence. Effort compounded over time creates results, and results command attention whether or not you asked for it. At first, being ignored feels like a dismissal, as if the world has already decided that you don't matter. But silence from others is not the same as failure. It simply means that you're still in the stage of preparation. Recognition, when earned, is not a matter of if, but when. Every hour you put in, every repetition, every late night, every sacrifice adds up. Even when nobody is watching, the process is working. And because truth eventually reveals itself, the recognition you've been denied slowly builds in the background, waiting for the right moment to surface. Inevitable recognition is tied to consistency. One moment of greatness can be overlooked. A single achievement can be brushed aside. But when you show up again and again, your pattern becomes undeniable. Consistency builds a body of work, and that body of work becomes evidence. The people who ignored you in the beginning may continue to turn away, but eventually your presence grows too large to be hidden. You become a force not because you demanded attention, but because your results made you impossible to overlook. This kind of recognition feels different from the kind you get when you chase validation. Validation is fleeting. It depends on the moods and opinions of others, but inevitable recognition is rooted in reality. It doesn't require permission. It doesn't need to be begged for. It grows out of the undeniable truth of what you've built. People may resist at first, they may doubt, they may dismiss, but results wear down resistance. Even your critics will have to acknowledge your progress, because action and growth create facts. And facts don't disappear when ignored. The path to inevitable recognition also demands patience. Recognition often comes later than you'd like. It tests your faith, your discipline, your ability to keep going, even when no one seems to care. That waiting season is part of the process. It strengthens you, it forces you to build endurance, and it ensures that when recognition does come, you're strong enough to handle it. If respect came too soon, it might inflate your ego before your foundation is ready. But when it comes after years of being overlooked, it lands on solid ground. You appreciate it more deeply, and you understand how much it costs to reach that point. Another key part of inevitable recognition is that it rarely arrives in a straight line. Sometimes the people closest to you will continue to ignore you, even as strangers begin to notice your work. Sometimes recognition comes from unexpected places, from opportunities you didn't anticipate. What matters is that your actions create ripples, and those ripples expand beyond your immediate circle. Even if the same people who ignored you never acknowledge you, your work will eventually reach eyes that value it, and those people will amplify it until it can't be denied. What makes inevitable recognition powerful is that it shifts the balance. In the beginning, you're the one who feels invisible, but as you stay consistent, the situation flips. Those who ignored you start to feel your presence whether they want to or not. Your work becomes visible in their conversations. Your name comes up in spaces you've never stepped into. Your results become part of the larger story. But recognition then is no longer something you chase, it chases you. It becomes unavoidable because what you've built demands it. And recognition earned in this way is also lasting. Because it's built on a foundation of years of unseen work, it doesn't crumble when trends shift or when attention moves elsewhere. It's sustained by the depth of your effort, by the resilience you develop during the seasons of being ignored. People might forget a quick success story, but they don't forget the ones who showed up again and again until their presence became part of the landscape. Inevitable recognition isn't just applause, it's permanence. There's also a liberating truth in reaching the point of inevitable recognition. By the time it comes, you no longer need it. The years of being ignored taught you how to move without validation, how to create without applause, how to keep pushing without an audience. So when the recognition finally arrives, it's not the fuel that drives you. It's just confirmation of what you already knew. It validates the process, but it doesn't define it. And that's why it's so powerful. You've grown past the need for approval, but the world gives it anyway. Inevitable recognition is proof that silence, patience, and persistence are never wasted. Even if it feels like no one is paying attention, the work you're putting in is accumulating value, is stacking in the background, building weight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And when it does, the recognition is louder, stronger, and more meaningful than anything you could have demanded early on. The world can ignore you for a season, but it cannot ignore results forever. So when they overlook you, when they pretend not to see you, when they act like your presence doesn't matter, don't waste your voice begging to be heard. Don't drain your spirit fighting for a seat at their table. Sit in your silence, protect your energy, grow in the shadows, let your actions speak, let your pain fuel you, and trust that recognition is coming, whether they want it to or not. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's the patience to build without applause, the discipline to move without validation, the faith to keep going when nobody claps. And when that silence finally breaks, when the results of your grind stand tall, it won't be whispers anymore. It'll be undeniable. The power of silence is that it turns being ignored into preparation, neglect into fuel, and invisibility into impact. You don't have to shout for respect. You don't have to fight to be seen. All you have to do is keep moving, keep building, and keep believing. The silence that once felt like rejection will become the very echo of your greatness.